Hello, my name is Eleftheria Hatzimichael, and I am an assistant professor of hematology at the University of Ioannina in Greece and a CRTH alumni. In this podcast, I will be discussing sponsors in investigator-initiated clinical trials and the roles that they perform. I have created a few slides to accompany this podcast, and these can be accessed through the resources section of the clinical trial map on the EHA Campus. Development of this podcast has been funded by EHA, and to listen to other podcasts in this series on clinical trials, please visit the EHA Campus at www.ehaweb.org. I would like to begin by talking about the importance of investigator-initiated clinical trials, or as they are more commonly referred to, IITs. As physicians, I believe, and I think that you will agree with me, that our role is not only to diagnose, care for, and treat patients, but also to constantly aim to advance patient care. A key way to advance patient care is through clinical trials, since they provide the necessary medical evidence for our everyday clinical decision-making. Within the medical community, each and every one of us has the ethical responsibility to participate in clinical trials, and where appropriate, to also encourage our eligible patients to participate. Most importantly, however, as physicians, we all have extensive knowledge in our chosen specialty. This means we are the ones that are driving advancement in our specialist areas, and as such, we are the first ones to recognize the challenges, the hurdles, and barriers that exist. This in-depth knowledge is exactly what makes us best placed to recognize and to ask the important scientific questions that can only be answered through clinical trials. This also highlights the need for physicians to not only participate in clinical trials, but to design them as well. So, what are IITs? Well, they are clinical trials where the investigator puts forward the research question, develops the protocol, and conducts the trial. They are also an area that is gaining renewed interest as more pharmaceutical companies are using them as a creative and cost-effective way to innovate and improve patient outcomes. Furthermore, because they answer important research questions without direct commercial interest, they play an increasingly essential role in global health. Before I talk about the roles and responsibilities of the sponsor in an IIT, I want to quickly differentiate between a sponsor and a funder. Quite often, these two terms, funder and sponsor, are used interchangeably. However, they do not mean the same thing. And in the context of clinical trial research, the term sponsor conveys a different meaning. The sponsor is either an individual, for example, a clinical researcher, a physician, or an entity, such as a pharmaceutical company, an academic institution, or any other organization that is responsible for the initiation, the management, the financing or arranging financing, and the oversight of the clinical trial, and for all the communications with the regulatory authorities. Therefore, it is preferable to call the organization or person providing financial support for a trial the funder, while the organization or person responsible for the conduct of a clinical investigation is referred to as the sponsor. As I have already mentioned, in IITs, the sponsor is the physician or clinical researcher who both initiates and conducts the investigation, and he or she is 100% responsible for the trial. Please note that in a non-commercial trial, the sponsor can also be a collaborative research group or the employer of the coordinating principal investigator, such as an academic institution or a research institute. As a young investigator, starting your own clinical trial is an exciting time. However, please remember that the responsibilities outlined in the 1996 ICH GCP guidelines are extensive, and you must ensure that you are fully aware of what they entail. These responsibilities can be broken down into 8 overarching topics. 1, ensuring good quality management and monitoring. 2, choosing your team and ensuring that appropriate training is provided. 3, awareness and adherence to local, national, and international guidelines, laws, and regulations. Number 4, trial design and management. 5, transfer of trial-related obligations. 6, reporting and documentation. 7, the responsibilities of the sponsor as a principal investigator or PI. And last but not least, research agreements. I will now talk through each of these in turn, starting with the responsibility number 1, ensuring good quality management and monitoring. One of the key responsibilities of the sponsor is to implement and maintain quality assurance. Monitoring is defined by the International Council for Harmonization, GCP standards, as overseeing a clinical trial to ensure that it is conducted and reported in accordance with the protocol, the GCP guidelines, and any other applicable regulatory requirements. Although it is the sponsor's responsibility to ensure good quality monitoring, this task is quite often contracted to an outside vendor. Responsibility number 2, choosing your team and ensuring that appropriate training is provided. You will find out that conducting a clinical trial is labor-intensive and time-consuming. Therefore, a sponsor who is also a PI in an IIT should carefully select a team that will be able to support and advise on medical-related questions or problems, or serve as trial investigators themselves. The sponsor must, however, ensure that all members of his or her team have both the educational and training requirements necessary to perform the tasks needed during the trial, and to ensure that everything is compliant with local law and international guidelines. All training that is required for the trial needs to be systematic, structured, and documented. And in the case of investigators, it involves not only training on the trial protocol, but also on the basic principles of clinical research in GCP. An important point to note is that updated training may be needed periodically if protocols need to be modified during the course of the trial. Responsibility number 3, awareness and adherence to local, national, and international guidelines, laws, and regulations. Before the start of a trial, it is essential that the sponsor is fully aware of the relevant local and international or even national guidelines, laws, and regulations. When the sponsor serves as the PI as well, he or she will need to obtain Research Ethics Committee and Institutional Review Board approval before the first patient is enrolled. It is also wise to arrange a meeting with the legal department of your institution. And I would also like to add that I strongly agree with the publication by Ravinetto and colleagues in 2015 that non-commercial organizations, such as academic institutions, should invest in legal, administrative, and management personnel in order to support their investigators. Responsibility number 4, trial design and management. Once a qualified team has been appointed, roles and responsibilities can be assigned to different team members. These include designing the protocol, supervising the overall conduct of the trial, managing and verifying the trial data, ensuring the safety and rights of trial participants, stop planning and conducting the statistical analysis, and preparing trial reports. At this point, you might find it useful to set up a clinical trial unit or clinical research unit. Moving to responsibility number 5, transfer of trial-related obligations and ensuring proper monitoring. During a trial, the sponsor may choose to transfer specific trial-related duties to a contract research organization, otherwise known as a CRO. When this is the case, all transfer duties and functions must be specified and documented in writing. Monitoring of the clinical trial, no matter whether this is by a CRO or the sponsor, should ensure that the rights, safety, and welfare of human participants are protected, that all reported data are accurate and adequate, and that the conduct of the trial is according to the specified protocol and regulations. However, it's important to remember that even when a CRO has been brought in to assist with a trial, the responsibility for the quality and accuracy of the trial data, together with all associated paperwork, resides solely with the sponsor. Which brings us on to responsibility number 6, reporting and documentation. It is the sponsor's responsibility to provide the necessary information for the IRB to evaluate risk and benefit, and to then submit the appropriate reports to the IRB and other relevant regulatory authorities. The sponsor must also keep accurate records to document that all requirements throughout the trial have been met, and correspondence with monitors and IRBs have also been maintained. Responsibility number 7, the responsibilities of the sponsor as a PI. In IITs, the sponsor may also serve as the PI, which means they have a dual role and dual responsibilities. As a PI, you retain oversight responsibility even when specific tasks are delegated to other members of your team. Additionally, PI responsibilities include, among others, documenting the delegation of trial responsibilities and tasks to qualified and adequately trained research staff, supervising trial performance and overseeing the performance of trial staff at the research site, ensuring that participants' well-being and safety are protected, and that all trial procedures are conducted at the research sites in accordance with the protocol and GCP, and overseeing investigational product accountability. Responsibility number 8, research agreements. Research agreements are arrangements that pertain to things such as confidentiality, intellectual property, publication, insurance, indemnification, and participant injury. It is again the role of the sponsor to ensure that arrangements such as these are all in place if and when they are required. And so, to summarize, if you are thinking about undertaking the role of sponsor in a clinical trial, is not a decision that should be taken lightly. The responsibilities are vast, as we have just discussed, and the overall responsibility of the trial will rest with you. Preparation, consulting with colleagues and experts in areas where your knowledge may be lacking, and above all, determination are key to the trial's success. However, the sense of satisfaction after completing your trial and advancing knowledge in your specialty will be something that you can be extremely proud of in the years to come. Thank you very much for your attention.